Hello to everybody. I've prepared 4 presentations for today. 3 of them concern gels in attractive sachets, and then we'll say something again about lactoferrin. The first thing is the gel, which is called Lift Up and is supposed to energize a human being, give energy to life. I'm afraid that sometimes I repeat myself because we already shared that, but from the energy point of view, we burn slowly inside. Sugar, glucoses and all those elements that we eat in our food slowly oxidize and burn, and as it goes through various enzymatic cascades, everything happens slowly so that we don't burn out. The basic substrate that gives us the energy is obviously sugars, saccharose and trehalose. We will introduce them in a moment. So they are also contained in this gel, but there is a whole number of other agents that make the energy metabolism more efficient. These include just standard vitamins, but they are not that standard. Some of them are special. There is also a herbal extract, Chinese magnolia vine, or Schisandra chinensis in Latin. Why we selected it? Because in the past it was published that the Russian army uses it for the combat missions in Afghanistan. When I looked at the groups of these agents, which are called adaptogenous. What is adaptogenous? As it's indicated by the name, you adapt to something that's happening around you, and it doesn't matter whether it is a mental load or physical load. At school we learned, and my experience also showed, that if I want to adapt, I go for ginseng. Ginseng in Czech translated as something like all healing, whether from Siberia or Korea, and it works perfectly, and I incline to that a lot, because that was one of the first tested agents when I joined Professor Šianek in Palackého University in Olomouc. He showed me how to test these. This is no longer done. It's a small mouse that you can buy in a pet shop for 10 crowns and drop it in a bucket with water and measure how long it can swim until it starts drowning. Then the assistant obviously takes it out and saves it, so no mouse dies. And it's a great objective test to prove that if you give something to the animal, it can cope with stress, mental stress much better, and when it is exhausted and it cannot cope any longer, starts drowning, obviously it also showed great differences, and the differences were even after one dose stimulation presented about 30% difference, but long term, for a week or a month, is a huge tonization, and the animal could perform much better. The second best species after animals is family members, who first are excited and agree to be parts of the testing. Sometimes things go wrong and the dose is too high, and your wife tells you, I can't go to work today because I can't leave the toilet. What did you put in that? So this is just to explain how it works, but otherwise we try to test many agents on ourselves, and only when we are sure that the results are what we expected or anticipated, then we go to more general tests, and after some time we can present it to you, and then we can be sure that this is not a placebo and the outcome has a scientific substance. Back to Schisandra. Apart from being an adaptogen, we call it, or I call it, a rescuer. I will show you the liver. It behaves similar to herbal polyphenol, protecting the liver against the steratosis, cirrhosis, even to the extent that at the times when I, being a young student, I used to play in a band and dance to make some extra money. My colleagues would ask me, like, we made a bet, I want to drink 10 beers and I don't want to fall down. So that was exactly the person that I needed. So here is 3 grams of Cassandra, and then you will tell me. And then it was unpleasant because 5 in the morning someone rang the doorbell, I was still green, and he said, well, don't give it to me anymore because I didn't experience anything, I didn't get high. So that's a great protectant. And it's not only alcohol which is toxic. If you look in the literature, you can find when there are intoxications from amanitas, it's life-threatening, but if you took some Cassandra before that, there is a high probability that you would survive. And also other toxins, toxical matters, chemicals. You mentioned benzene. Cassandra is great for organic toxins. Great protector. We've spoken about the brain stimulation, nerves, mental tiredness, that's the experience from the army. Cognitive functions, what is it? Especially with elderly people, you realize that people don't remember, don't find their way through the space, don't recognize their relatives and their vicinity. So Cassandra is great for refreshing the memory into the past. And when it comes to the adaptogenous effect, we already talked about it. Now, the key saccharides. Today, sugar, white sugar, saccharose, is despised, which is only partly true. Here in Europe, we get saccharose from sugar beet, unlike in hot countries where they get sugar from the reed, sugar reed. However, if you analyze any fruit, you can find saccharose in it. How much do you think that there is saccharose in apple, in pineapple, in tomatoes? If you analyze them, you will always find monosaccharides, glucoses, fructoses, and others, and there is always going to be a large portion of saccharose. So if I eat 1 kilo of apples per day, I will be like a pig, really fat, because they contain a lot of saccharose. So we use the smallest reasonable amount of saccharose to stimulate the brain. Then there is another carbohydrate, I don't know if you heard about that, it's called trehalose. It's a disaccharide and its molecule contains 2 glucoses. Glucoses appears a lot in both animal and plant realms and often in high concentrations. It can be found in insects or in lower vertebrae like reptiles or amphibians. You may know those pictures from the nature. When winter comes, frogs and snakes freeze and the spring follows, everything melts and they start moving again, continue living. So this is to be contributed to trehalose. If these animals didn't have trehalose, they would freeze to death. But thanks to the trehalose, which behaves as antifreeze in the cars, they are stabilized, and their proteins are stabilized, not only towards the cold side, but also to the hot side. If you spend a lot of time in Sahara Desert, you would survive much longer with trehalose. Our body can break trehalose down to glucoses and glucoses, but does that very slowly. So it does not generate a high blood sugar index. We went for it for the reason that also people suffering from diabetes could use it. I guess that this might be enough for those 2 saccharides. This is an animal called a water bear. which is the most resistant organism on the planet Earth, much more resistant than bacteria or viruses. So if you, well, there is Veverská Bytyška as a town, and they have a cobalt bomb for radiating, so water bears would survive even that, followed by cockroaches. I don't know why God created it like this, that the water bear and the cockroach would survive any radiation. Even if you drop them in the reactor, it wouldn't harm them. What I found really interesting, and that's why I used it here, I learned that the Japanese collected some water bears in the ice and let them for another 30 years frozen in the laboratory. And they defrosted them, and most of them not only got out of the hibernation, but most of them laid their eggs, and most of the eggs were so vital that new water bears got out of them. Well, you can hardly see them with naked eye, only 1 millimeter long. Remember it. Just to prove that I'm telling you truth, you all Google on the internet, so find water bears, Google them. You can see many programs on water bears on YouTube, and you will learn a lot from them. This is my pet, so to speak. So if I want to build a stable or something, I would put water bears there as the first animal, and I don't know how I would communicate with them. Then there is one amino acid in the gel, which is quite different from all the others, for the reason that it contains sulfur in its molecule. And always when you have sulfur in a molecule, it means an anomaly and something unique. So out of the other amino acids that our body uses, there could be cysteine or methionine, but taurine is the best. The reason is that our body can use it together with sorbite for osmotic purposes, but especially for the energy metabolism with the highest consumption of energy, which is the brain and the heart. Taurine can overshadow even the Q10 coenzyme in emergency situations. It's much more efficient. It is sort of a detoxifier. What's really interesting for me is that taurine is contained in hair and body hair in high concentrations. Microorganisms, if we die, you can notice that if you find the body, you find a skeleton and hair. The reason is that microorganisms don't have the ability to break the sequences of amino acids, those that contain the sulfur, and that's the reason why they survive for so long. So it's a unique amino acid, and if we eat it while being alive, it's got a great benefit for us. Vitamins of the B group, perhaps just briefly, because we all are somehow special or different in something. There are numerous new scientific discoveries, especially in the group of the B group of vitamins, but we will skip this. There will be another opportunity to talk about these. This is an example of what I mentioned already. That was some time ago, 2 years ago. So you can see clearly that it is the Krajíček family, a man. That time I was 59, 2 sons and a wife. What we did, I printed an A4 sheet of paper with text, and everybody had to retype the text on the computer, and we measured the time and number of mistakes or misprints. And it was obvious that the boys had much better results than us. So if we apply these agents, or if you give them to your children, your brothers and sisters, I can't see any old man like me, so probably not grandchildren, but it works for old people, but it works even better with the young ones. Then they work like rackets. It was great. And it was not only in the mental activity, like typing on the computer, because you don't need any physical exercise, you don't have to speed up your heartbeat, but when we use the exercise bike, the young people had better results, but the differences were not as huge as in the mental activity. So it works for both the mental and physical load. Let's jump to the next product. Well, you can see what the packaging looks like. It's not my credit. I'm responsible only for the content. We have better experts for packaging materials. And now we have a gel which has exactly the opposite effect. It should calm you down. Everything should be okay. I don't know how to say not to turn the female part of the audience against me. Menopause is a terrible thing. It pisses me off. And then cut it out then, please. You don't know what to do, and you think about, if I kill someone, will I get 12 years or 15 years in prison? But if you take this gel, then you can say the sentence, well, the devil speaks to me, I don't care. And that's exactly how you feel. And I will show you the mechanism of how it works. So there are 4 key components. Extract from sour cherries, and we selected it especially for the reason that it concerns insulin, enzymes, and it's a key player for the growth hormone and other cascades. But mainly, the sour cherry contains a limited amount of melatonin, which is a hormone for sleeping. So you shouldn't take this product in the morning unless you suffer from kinetosis and you want to sail or something. But if you take it in the afternoon or towards the evening, it works wonderfully. Well, this is a key thing. Our body consists of 21 amino acids. 6 of them are essential, which means that the body cannot form them and we need to receive them in the food. L-tryptophan is one of them. And again, compared to others, it's different for being aromatic. It has a relatively large molecule and we need the smallest amount of it out of all the amino acids, tens of hundreds of milligrams. And what's interesting is the multifunctionality of it. It's not just one effect, but there is a whole scale of those. And you, by your status, whether you are running, whether you are drinking coffee, whether you suffer from an illness or you are on a medication, you can dramatically influence what happens with L-tryptophan in your body. This picture shows how often these metabolites are influenced by the B6 vitamin, and that's why it is contained in the gel. If it's there, tryptophan, without any further complications, can change into metabolites. Have you ever heard of serotonin, dopamine, serotonin? Hormones of happiness, as they call them. And when it gets dark, and our eyes experience not enough light, this reaction is triggered. Serotonin is changed into melatonin, and that's the hormone that puts us to sleep. The reaction always goes through eyes, so we have to have our eyes open. What is the moral from this? The way we live often these days, we are asking for problems. Because if we live in intensive light or semi-light, the reaction is very limited and we find it hard to sleep. So if you've got your TV set in the bedroom, throw it away immediately. What's the worst for me? Well, you are young, so that's okay, but the older you get, the worse it gets. If you come to a place where elderly citizens live, you can see the crucial mistake of these people, especially those who are immobile. They have dimmed light 24 hours a day. They have the rolls down to protect them from the sun, but the light is on through all night long to be ready for the nurse or something so that they could ask for help. We've been designed by God to live in light like this wonderful sun. It's enough, 1 hour a day, and then at night there should be absolute darkness. You can test it. It might be a good idea for ESSENS to play a game. Can you spend 1 or 2 days in absolute dark? You can start by put on some blinders on eyes and earplugs, and you will be surprised how quickly your status will improve. This is a great number of interesting reactions, but we don't have time for that. But this is important. Part of the tryptophan that we eat changes into B3 vitamin niacin, but only half of tryptophan changes into the vitamin, but we have to receive the second half through our food, which is most frequently meat. Let's go to the third product, which is to supply us with collagen, flexibility, freshness. I've selected a lady. This is an old picture. When I ran away from a state enterprise and started making my living on my own business, those stresses are terrible. You always wonder if they pay you, and all those things are really difficult to survive. So what I did, that I would sit down and watch the internet, and I watched the human creativity, and it always calmed me down. I admire people who are skilled, who can do something, who endeavor something, and you see the results. And this lady is from a website which is called Behance. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. And there is a huge amount of skills like this handmade necklace, but there is furniture, there are apartments, colors, unbelievable. I always stared at those with my mouth open and always said to myself, look how much sleepless nights there must be behind that to achieve this. So stop whining and start doing something. So that's my explanation why I have this lady from the website. Then there are also lights for the bedroom, not disturbing. Everything's integrated in the walls. Wonderful. If you want me to, I can send you pictures of my bookshelves that are leaning sideways. What can be found in the gel? If you always see a historical document and it speaks about the life on the planet Earth, about evolution, multi-cell life, it always looks the same like a school textbook. Take a little bit of oxygen from the atmosphere, add amino acids, heat it up, and look at that a week later. And obviously there is vitamin C, and it creates this porridge. It's all about vitamin C, but as the vitamin C not to be chemical, it's isolated or extracted from the American or Mexican cherry tree. You surely know it. That's a generally known fact. But it's not only about the vitamin C. This is terribly important. There are also other agents that have a great pharmacological effect. We'll talk about it later. Whoa, I skipped it. When I look at the approved claims for the food supplements, there is a whole range of them, and the very last one is interesting. It's for normal functioning of the skin. But frankly speaking, we don't want just the normal functioning. You know those tests, how quickly it goes back. And so I want to have a flexible skin. I don't want to look like being 61, even though I probably do. Back during communism, I would be a well-settled pensioner, sitting with my cane in front of the doorstep. This is what the extract looks like. It's dark yellow thanks to the polyphenols. So this is one key component. Sorry for that, but I'm full of it, and I always have to tell you because it seems to me that it's wonderful if you come or someone comes from your family to a museum. Me as a biologist, I'm fascinated by evolution, and I ask a question: how is it possible that in 3.5 or 4 billion years, as long as there's life on the planet Earth, most of the time, until 500 million years ago, there was a single cell life only, those green algae producing oxygen. And then something happened, and suddenly out of this single cell, multi-cells put together, and multi-cell life came to existence. Obviously, oxygen had to be available, and vitamin C and amino acids. And what do you think that is inside of this? What is holding the cells together? Yes, perfect. Collagen. A harder question: what does hold cells together in case of plants and trees? Chlorophyll? No. No, there's no collagen in the plants with the exception of acacia. Celluloses, lignin, tannin. So the plant realm is completely different than the animal realm. We can't eat those things. So these two different worlds from the point of cell life. Without the glue celluloses or collagen in case of animals, it wouldn't work at all. I'm a patriot. You surely know this gentleman, Jan Evangelista Purkyně. We are in the city of Brno, and he spent most of his life in Brno. And he devoted his life to cells and the multi-cell life. He's globally renowned, and I can tell you that if I travel abroad and everybody knows Purkyně, and when they realize that I'm from the Czech Republic, they always say, "Oh, Mendel and Purkyně," and they bow down. Darwin is famous, but not as famous as Purkyně or Mendel, believe me. And it's a pity that we, the locals, don't know much about that, and we speak about money and political struggles, but something that we live on every day and benefit from, that's something that we keep forgetting. Well, let's have a look at the acacia tree. It's a very interesting thing. The extract from the acacia tree, I will have a picture. It looks like this. It grows where there is a lot of sun. And it contains these two things at the top. Polysaccharide, which is called arabinogalactan, which is not so interesting. It's a prebiotics, it's nice. People fart from it, but this is an indicator that our microbes can process it and they can multiply in it and they enjoy it. But for these purposes, we are more interested in what's written here, the protein component. And what's interesting here, that if you look at the sequence of amino acid, proline, hydroxyproline, and so on, it is exactly the same as the human collagen. So one plant is able to produce collagen in spite of not creating an animal product, but it contains it. I love breast steaks. So chicken or turkey meat contains a lot of tryptophan. It's intoxication. Do you know why Americans sleep so well after Thanksgiving? Because they eat the full turkey and the tryptophan that's there. And when the day gets dark, everything changes into melatonin and they fall asleep. They are not drunk. Tryptophan puts them to sleep like babies and they sleep all night long. So from this point of view, what the EU or the producers abroad, that they send us chicken skins, boiled gelatin and so on, I always tell them, why do you fight them? It's much better than importing chicken breast from the nutrition point of view. It's great. And you are telling them that it's a poor quality. food. It's exactly the other way around. If I look at it as a biologist, then we have chickens, like roasted, and as we eat the skin as well, what does the skin contain? Collagen, boiled or baked gelatin, and also cholesterol. We love cholesterol. We are a rebellious company. We always go against the flow, but it's not for the reason that we would always want to go against the flow. But it's the experience in people or in patients is different. I don't know if you heard the stories. I can repeat them again within a minute. In the city of Hradec Králové, there is a military department of the Charles University. And there was a project, a grant, and we were told a pilot of the jet fighter Gripen, 12 kilometers high for half an hour, 2 hours, depending on the length of the mission, and having just the plexiglass above his head. You cannot compare it with a normal flight. That person comes down after the mission, and if you take his blood and analyze it, you realize that that person got unbelievable doses of radiation. They really do deserve to retire at the age of 45 because they don't stand a chance to live to be 80. And our task was to search for substances or agents to protect their lives. Once the project was over, there were many interesting discoveries, including cholesterol. So it was switched into the human application, and Professor Zadák wanted us to monitor people who went to the tunnel of CT scan, like X-ray and so on. The first time in my life I learned that the CT scan gives you 1,000 times higher radiation dose than the lung X-ray. So if a doctor gets a patient from a car accident, sends you to the CT scan to see what's happened inside, and would like to send you there again after 2 weeks because he does not know whether he made the right decision. He's not God, he doesn't know everything. But it would kill you to be there again. So what is the result from me? All of those people who had low cholesterol died. And many of them were those that were taking drugs to reduce the level of cholesterol. My mother, she was born in 1935, which means she's 83 now. At the age of 77, she cut off her left arm on the circular saw while making wood for the winter. Then I read it in the newspapers that her children are terrible, wouldn't take care of her mother, she had to cut her own wood. But I was in France, so I didn't even know about that. Anyway, I did one thing all my life, as she went regularly to the doctors because she was allergic all her life, so she always got B12 injections and had high cholesterol. Then I took the box of statins and threw it in the bin, and I said, that's the best what you can do with the pills. And I told her, because a helicopter came for her to save her, they retransplanted her arm, she can move it. And I told her, do you know why it was successful? Because you have high cholesterol. I'm not saying that extra high cholesterol is the greatest thing. No, everything is about the balance. But mildly increased cholesterol is okay. We are here in Brno. About 5 years ago, Professor Špinar published a work with cardiovascular patients. The higher the cholesterol, that was the conclusion of the study, the longer survival rate. Statin is a double-edged sword. After a chronic consumption, does generate longer life rate, but not for reducing cholesterol, but for having different effects that were not known until recently. We speculate about it, pour a lot of money in it, claim that statins are synthetic analogies of the vitamin D, but that would be for a different story. But I've got this white pudding here, because this is the natural way how our forefathers would eat animals or meat. It contains gelatin, boiled ears, skin, and everything. So amino acids are balanced there reasonably, as much as our human body is prepared for that. So if you think about eating white pudding with onions, it's much better than eating the breast steak from the health point of view, the nutrition, not for the taste. That's the reason why this collagen, which is so wonderful for the human skin, we added the tryptophan or supplemented with tryptophan to balance the collagen in a way. Do I have anything else here? Our body constantly renews. You surely remember from the school that red blood cells renew once in 3 months, and it speeds up if you are ill. White cells 2 weeks, skin 1 month. Even our muscles renew. The skeleton, we renew it 10 to 15 times during the lifetime. Faster in the young age, then it slows down. So if we take it as an average, we are 2 to 3 year old children. We've already shared it with you. So I'm not 61-year-old. Your cells are as old as mine. They keep renewing. So most of them get killed through apoptosis and new cells are created. So we should actually ask, how many cell divisions have you experienced? That's a piece of information that would indicate where we are. Age is just a number. As I say, it's easier and easier to get a higher age, obviously. The bad things that are happening in our bodies are connected with oxygen, which should be for a different lecture, but also with the process which is mentioned here. Glycation. Glucose as a monosaccharide reacts with other elements in our cells, with fats, but mainly with proteins and enzymes. It can be seen here what glucose does when it gets uncontrollably to the protein, what sort of a mass. I don't want to strip you of this. What if Mr. Märta skips it? And this is seen in a much more important form, what it looks like in the skin. This is okay. Once it starts breaking and destructing, this becomes rougher and rougher, and wrinkles start appearing. And this is a great picture. I stole it from the Germans because this seemed to me very illustrative, what it looks like when we are young and beautiful, and what it looks like when we get older, when we are no more, well, yeah. And on top of that, the skin changes its color. These brown pigments start concentrating. The body cannot get rid of them because this is not a simple soluble molecule, and this becomes bigger and bigger like a depot and makes spots or freckles. And what can these substances in the gel do? Not only to supply collagen that our body loves treating, but in addition, those glycated products, those that cause the aging and the unpleasant skin, it prevents its creation and removes those products. I know it doesn't happen the second day, but if you apply it for 3 months, you will see it. If you have a freckle, try to measure it and test it, that it's really true. The dose of collagen is relatively high, 7 grams. It's a lot. But as it contains also tryptophan and other components, everything should be fine. As there is no chronopharmacokinetics, you can divide it. You can drink it all day long. And after 3 months, you should look younger on your skin. And again, I used a picture from the Behance website, which is about 10-15 years old. Let's go on. Now let's say something about lactoferrin. Lactoferrin is not anything new for you, and I'll have a repetition lesson because I'm convinced after the time of using it and having experience with it, you know it all. So why we created it? We were searching a substitute for situation if someone is under an infection but not anything serious, but just small illnesses, 37.5 degrees, being dizzy and so on, then we can use a molecule which is natural to our body. Lactoferrin is a physiological substance. Our body synthesizes itself a lactoferrin. The one that we use is isolated from milk, but it's very similar to the human one. If you can protect yourselves and your family members or friends from using antibiotics unreasonably, please do it, because there are always side effects. If I'm speaking about a statistic person, 40% of antibiotic users suffer from diarrhea. Most of antibiotics are strong immunosuppressives. Your immunity goes down. You get rid of the infect, you solve it, but you are still not okay. If it's life-threatening, then no question about the use of the antibiotics. But if you take it just to get rid of a virus, or you are not sure whether to take it or not, it's not so serious, don't take antibiotics. Lactoferrin can do much more, however. It acts like antibiotics, but only to some groups of viruses. This is not universal. It has many effects on some parasites, and I was surprised, and it came from you as a stimulus, that some people wrote to me like this particular letter. My mother used to take lactoferrin, and as she suffers from osteoporosis, she went to have her bones measured, the density, and it was measured that the density was higher in spite of not being medicated by anything else but lactoferrin. Well, I wanted to confirm it, and I rediscovered America. It's known that lactoferrin can be used for osteoporosis. On top of that, there are many other things that should be revised, because everything is around this parameter, which is called BMD, bone mineral density. And as the ethanol, the World Health Organization selected a 30-year-old woman of Caucasus type. They don't consider the effect of aging and genetic deviations and so on. So none of you has a density of a healthy 30-year-old Caucasus woman. It's changing with the age, whether you are a male or female. You can't change anything about this. But it's still not true that we all should have a higher frequency of fractures. So if you take, instead of the bone mineral density parameter, if you take how often you experience a fracture, you get different numbers. So it's a different story. And in the medicine, calcium and D3 vitamin is given to people, and the result is that people then suffer from a higher rate of breast cancer and man prostate cancer. So it's my advice to you. Well, we need calcium. It's generally believed calcium is highly toxic, so you don't need it. If you look at the concentrations of calcium in the sea or around in the water, and extracellular concentrations, and in the cell there are also 1000 times higher differences. Our cells don't like to have calcium inside. So lactoferrin, to my surprise, is an alternative how to treat osteoporosis. Lactoferrin looks like this. It's a large molecule. When we spoke about insulin, insulin is something like 1/3 of its size. And it consists of 700 amino acids, and it has additional skills or abilities like to fix iron. Each lactoferrin fixes 2 atoms of iron and 2 molecules of hydrogen carbonate. You can take a picture if you want to. And macroscopically it looks like pink powder, very gluey or sticky. We have it in all our bodies. It protects us from external infections, because daily we live in a constant emergency state from the microbial point of view. There are millions of microbes everywhere. We breathe them in, they get in our eyes, we swallow them, and yet we don't fall ill because we have a very well designed immunity system, and part of our our immunity system which resists so well is lactoferrin. You can see its concentrations in the saliva, tears, blood and so on. Even the white blood cells that live only 2 weeks, developing in the bones for 7 days and then being flown out into the blood, they also contain a huge amount of lactoferrin. And God designed it so well that if this white cell dies, its content is poured out into the blood and it's all lactoferrin. Great design. This is a picture of what each molecule of lactoferrin fixes hydrogen carbonate and RN. Why is it so important? If I breathe in, let's say, a microbe pneumonia or salmonella, what does this pathogen or this bacteria that wants to threaten me, what does it do in my body? It's searching especially for RN so that it can multiply and it can steal it from the blood or from a surface epithel. And as the body knows it, using lactoferrin and transferrin and other enzymes, it hides RN into the the liver. The biggest mistake is that if someone falls ill, he or she looks like anemic, with pale lips, tired, but it's not that they would lack RN. If you take a blood sample, some parameters would indicate that there's a lack of RN. Today, most doctors know it, but still some of them don't. They say, you need more RN. That was the case of my mother. Not only she was high with cholesterol, now she's an oncologic patient. And even though if I am an oncologic patient, my body saves RN in the safe, the tumor also needs RN to build the body quickly. So if my body hides RN, the tumor grows much more slowly. Then I tell the doctor, well, I see it as almost like a mistake of a beginner to treat oncologic patients with such doses of RN. So let's go back to the nutrition. You can see that the main source of our nutrition is red meat. If I am a vegetarian or I eat just vegetarian dishes, there is not much RN. I can take pills, but lactoferrin is a great option because it behaves in such a way that if I lack RN in my organism, not being ill, it provides me with RN and it's acceptable RN. And if there is a surplus of RN, it fixes RN and helps me to get rid of it. Under normal circumstances, our body cannot get rid of surplus of RN. There are unwise people who feed themselves with vitamin bombs, including lots of RN, and they harm themselves. Then harmful oxygen radicals are formed. You can see it macroscopically where chronic consumers of alcohol. How can you tell that person? Red nose. And what is the red color? That's RN. The body cannot get rid of the RN, and for that reason it takes it to the soft tissues. Alcohol increases the absorption of RN into the body. It's complex, it goes through amino acid and so on. It's not important, but what is important, sometimes I feel like publishing a book called Mythbusters. The red wine and half a kilo red steak, it's a heavy intoxication with RN. Don't do it. Half a kilo white fish and white wine is again heavy intoxication. I don't know who came up with this idea, but alcohol and meat, which is the source of RN, shouldn't be served. Alcohol makes sure that all the RN that you've eaten will appear in the system and will start harming you. Be careful with that. Otherwise, recently known, to my great sorry, because I loved it, I'm a teetotaler now, but I used to drink, because if you compare smokers and people who drink, smokers are better off than alcohol drinkers. If you have 3 a day, you move Alzheimer by 10 years. This is just an estimated figure based on statistics. There will always be influence of what you do and the region you live in. The best thing is not to smoke, but if you do, don't smoke the whole box. But if you have 3 or 5 cigarettes, it's not as bad as drinking 2 deciliters of wine per day. It's a surprise. It was surprising for me too. I don't know if you know about this, but several decades ago there were multicentric studies. What is it? You test a huge number of patients and test one thing. So when there were antioxidants coming to Europe from the West, and these are bad for us, we need to protect ourselves. And what is the target group who's got increased performance of oxygen radicals? That's smokers. So it started in Scandinavia and then it spread throughout the north, and few of these studies were completed because it was discovered that if a smoker gets this tablet with antioxidants, they are much worse off than those who did not receive anything. It was not a cancer of lungs or colon and so on. I can't remember those. There was the spleen and other organs, and when they were searching for what is the reason, the smoker in many cases also drank, and new things were discovered, that alcohol is much worse than what we could ever imagine. I know that I'm in South Moravia, the wine region. It's hard to hear this, but I believe the medicinal statistics. I believe them because there are no tricks or manipulation with primary data. You can hardly find anything like that there. So if you have an option, limitation is the best thing you can do. The truth is that it's said that there's this French paradox. So it's true that if people are ill with heart diseases, alcohol helps them a little bit, but the risk of getting cancer gets higher. Well, even the French situation is different. We are comparing the uncomparable. People live differently culturally. Have you experienced that? I was not many times in France, but when I visited a university, invited me for lunch. It took 2.5 hours. I felt like I need to work. What are you doing? Well, only the 5th course is going to come. Will you have dessert? Well, I don't eat sweet. No, it's not sweet. Dessert in France is cheese. It's a completely different world. The food is different, the culture of eating is different, and for that reason people probably live much longer than the European standard. Well, I left the topic, but I hope it was interesting. Lactoferrin has a bactericidal effect. What is it? It won't kill salmonella or the microbe, but it won't allow it to multiply. And it's a great advantage. Our body can deal with the small number of pathogens. It can kill them if they cannot multiply. It's got a static effect, and bactericidal means it kills. And we always used to make fun in the company, calling it the constrictor or strangler. If you look at this, how this happens, these are the 2 lobes of lactoferrin. They sit down on the membrane of the microbe, where it communicates with the external environment and stick there like glue. Take a tablet of lactoferrin and drop it in the water. It becomes very sticky, even in your fingers. So, strangled, killed. So, lactoferrin is antioxidant. It's a selective antimicrobial substance, so it kills pathogens. But we also have many microbes that are friendly. We need them, and we want them to fight on our side, so it neglects those. It's got antiviral effect, but not for all viruses, and it regulates or controls the iron absorption. What about lung chlamydia? It's much worse because chlamydia is intracellular. It's not outside the cell, so lactoferrin cannot reach it. But on the contrary, it can play a positive role through selena and iodine. Be active and write down, oh, I'm interested in the effect of lactoferrin on chlamydia, and we will look at what happens in the world. I'm willing to present it to you. Are you tired? On the other hand, you have a lot of hair. Those who are tired, well, I'm a typical representative of chlamydia pneumonia. Lactoferrin and selena, yes, but not separately, and plus additional antimicrobial matters, typically easy things like oregano, fennel, caraway seed, pepper. All of those are great antimicrobial matters. This is an example of what a human and bovine lactoferrin looks like. They are basically identical, and this is extremely important. Lactoferrin is very sensitive to friction and heat. You can imagine like an egg. If you take a fresh egg, which is still liquid, it's natural, native. It's not denaturized. Lactoferrin is the same. In this form in which we give it to you, it's natural, not denaturized. Lactoferrin is in milk, colostrum, and so on. But unfortunately, the Czech veterinary law says that you are obliged to heat the milk up through this UHT. And so you probably know it, that if you buy long shelf milk, there's nothing in it, it's just calcium and water. So if possible, buy fresh milk. If you live close to the borders, go to Germany or Austria, because these countries admit that milk can be just filtered, and the risk of getting tuberculosis from those cows is not very high, and it's not heated. And it tastes completely differently. It's great. And it's also microbial. So this is an example of how we learned how to work with it for a long time, not to kill or destroy the lactoferrin. If we are talking about eggs, I assume that you all fry your eggs. It must be treated thermally, because if you eat long time fresh eggs, raw eggs, after some time you will get a vitaminosis with B1 vitamin. That's anti-vitamins, as we call them. A human being is not designed to eat raw eggs. That's very interesting. Well, fried eggs sunny side up. Well, it's better to heat them for a longer time. These are technological things, let's skip those. This is not so interesting. And then we have two additives, and they are very important, because there is always a war inside our bodies. Just imagine that it's like army against an army. You must have your soldiers there, the cavalry, you have to have the shooters or snipers or tank unit. So when there are additional agents with antimicrobial effect, but use different effect of working, you always achieve a better result than a mono product. Selena. We will talk about selena and iodium. I can say publicly, many of you sent me their biochemical results, so I know what your body looks like, not visually, but based on your blood. Vast majority of you has a reduced function of the thyroid gland. I'm not talking about the vitamin D, but that would be a topic for another lecture. I was surprised by that, and it's good to deal with it. Without iodine and the thyroid gland, you won't get slimmer, whatever medicine you take. And there are additional things. This is Mr. Fleming. This is like respect to the end. Thank you very much, but we need to go on. The future is not in antibiotics. Frankly speaking, it's probably not a problem of the human population, but the problem is in what we eat. Antibiotics are generally used for animals that we eat, and in spite of various protection periods or quarantine, there are still remnants of antibiotics in the meat. From my point of view, the ideal thing is you can move to a village. Many of you may already live in the village. Do you keep your animals? Do you grow your own vegetables? If you can, do it, because from the mass production not much good can come. You can hear the discussions about Roundup and other chemicals. The processed food made of corn or maize, we've been not designed by God for this, and that causes the problems. A home garden is the best, but non-realistic in most cases. So thank you for your attention. I hope that you learned something interesting, and if you have any question, do ask it. I'm a chronic consumer of lactoferrin, even though I admit that when I actually met lactoferrin, I thought to myself, I'm going to address universities and faculties, so they knew something about these institutes, but it was not enough. So I traveled around, got to Belgium, got acquainted with an old gentleman, Jean-Paul Perelman. And he is much older than me, but I took him like my second father. He was a very kind person. He showed me around all the dairies in Belgium and all this heating and filtering of milk. He told me about lactoferrin and told me, do notice, around the world there are symposiums on different medical drugs for brain treatment and everything, and when it comes to natural substances and one molecule, lactoferrin is the only one. I remember him inviting me to China, which was unthinkable for me, so I didn't go. Then I asked him, so how should that be supplemented? And he started explaining. The most lactoferrin is used by the Japanese. All of them put it in the yogurt. Then he showed me, but generally the global consumption is in Asia. It's a rare molecule there. And to go back to the question, he's always been a heavy smoker. He wouldn't drink alcohol, but he would smoke. I told him, you can't smoke 2 boxes of cigarettes a day. It's a suicide. And he said, I'll show you that if I eat lactoferrin, I will not suffer from cancer of lungs. I've known him for 20 years. He's still around.